What's going on, everybody? It's the moment you've all been waiting for. I'm going to be reviewing the LD Systems Maui 44G2 versus the RCF Evox 12s. And once again, I wanted to thank both KPO DJ as well as RCF for sending me over these speakers, which I will be reviewing in this video. So we are here in my storage room where you can see all the DJ stuff is kept nice and organized. And we're going to be doing not only a pros and cons list of reasons why I like the Mauis versus reasons that I like the Evox 12s, but we're also going to be doing a sound test so you can see for yourself the difference with a variety of genres of music. So first up, as you can see behind me, we have the Maui 44G2s. And some of the reasons I really like this speaker. First, I really like the sleek look. All you have to do is snap those two pieces for the tops into the sub and you're ready to go. And all you have to do is plug in power and the XLR cable. Next, this speaker has some amazing specs on paper. First of all, 1500 watts RMS, which is the average wattage for continuous sound. We have a crazy 132 decibel SPL, which is just insane, as well as a higher peak wattage, and the bass just really hits really nicely. Another feature I really like is the Bluetooth. And I haven't used it a whole lot, but in those rare situations where, say, a client wants something playing while they're cleaning up or setting up, it comes in handy. You can just link your phone to it and it's ready to go. Another feature that I think has come in handy is the feedback-free feature. Now, I'm not really sure how to test this, but I've had situations where people were standing right in front of the speaker with the mic and we had no issues with feedback. But I think feedback-free is something that can be achieved with not only a good mic system, but also with managing your levels properly. Last, the feature I really like is that you can play stereo with one speaker. So it has two XLR inputs on the back and you can play with one speaker. Now, some of the things I don't really like about this speaker is, even though it has a really sleek look, which I really appreciate, it is super tall. And there's no way to adjust the height. What you see is what you get. And there's also no way to adjust the direction of your sound. You would have to just direct the speaker where you want it to go. So that I don't really like too much. Casters or wheels for this subwoofer, which is massive, is sold separately. That part is definitely a con when it goes up against the Evox 12s, and you'll see that in just a minute. Now, another one of those things where I mentioned it having better specs on paper, one of the specs I think is actually a drawback is the wider dispersion. Now, this speaker has a 120 degree by 25 degree dispersion, 120 being the horizontal and 25 being the vertical. Now, that is great and the sound definitely does travel, but when it comes to a situation like having a dance floor where you have your speakers hitting the crowd, you want them to feel the music, that wider dispersion kind of makes the sound a little thinner, if that makes sense, and it just doesn't hit in the same way as, say, your traditional tops and subs that a DJ would typically use. So for that, I think that particular spec of the dispersion is actually a con. And the last thing, as you can see, these speakers are huge. They come in at 105 pounds actually. And when we first got these, definitely had some trouble hauling these things around from gig to gig. Loading them into your truck is just very heavy. I've kind of gotten used to it, but it's definitely a drawback. All right, so next up we have the RCF Evox 12. And once again, I wanted to say thank you to KPO DJ as well as RCF for finally sending these wonderful speakers. I'm really appreciative, and yeah, let's get into some of the reasons I really like them. This weekend was actually the first time I tested out these speakers. I actually didn't even test them out at home first, which could have been a little risky, but it actually turned out really beautiful. It was a wedding reception, nice wide open space, and I wasn't in the most ideal place within the venue, I guess in relation to where all the guests were sitting, but things still turned out beautifully. So here's some of the reasons I really like these speakers. The first reason is, despite on paper the LD Systems having better specs, this speaker, just the sound was crystal clear, not only for dinner music and for mingling, cocktail hour, but also for dancing. Like all volume levels, the sound was just crystal clear. And the bass, the bass really hit. I was very, very impressed with the sound. And one thing I really appreciate about these speakers as well is even though there isn't an independent control for the tops and the subs, there is a little switch on the back where you can enable a higher bass boost. And yeah, it definitely hits. Another really important thing about these speakers that I really appreciate. So for the wedding, like I said, I was in a less than ideal place in relation to the guests because I was right up on 2 tables. And in the past, when I've been in this situation with the Maui 44 G2s, I've had people complaining about the sound. It was too loud, because there was no way for me to direct the sound over the guests' heads. But with these speakers, as you can see with the pole, you can adjust the height and you can also adjust the positioning of the tops, which really proved to be something that saved me for this gig. And I asked the guests that were sitting right there, they said, we're having no problems talking, we can still talk, love the music, no problem. So that was a big pro. So in relation to the LD systems, as I mentioned, the LD systems have a wider dispersion. These speakers have a more traditional dispersion of 90 degrees horizontal and 30 degrees vertical. So while the dispersion is a little bit more focused, again, on the dance floor, people will feel it a lot more. And I've noticed that with walking around, kind of walking near the speaker versus farther away, the sound really still does carry to the far corners of the room, especially when you're able to direct the tops, but the sound really hits. And especially for dancing, you want the guests to feel that energy. Okay, next, the biggest thing for me is that these subs are way more compact than the Maui 44 G2s. They only come in at 80 pounds. That's a huge plus for me. Them having less weight on them and less bulk, especially for loading up your vehicle, huge pro. And along with that, the sub actually has a built-in suitcase wheel system, and it has a handle you can pull up, you can push it down, it doesn't get in the way of the wires, and that's it. It's wonderful. And as I mentioned, in relation to the Maui 44 G2s, which have a separate caster board that you can purchase, and I have them, but I really don't use them that often because it's just another added thing to put in my vehicle. And I use a rock and roller cart, so I don't really use them that often, but having the suitcase wheels built in where I don't have to think about it, wonderful, beautiful. So with all that said, let's get into some of the cons. So I'm not really crazy. As I mentioned, I love the sleek look of the Mauis. Not really crazy about the pole look, but as I mentioned, having it more versatile for the direction and height, I can deal with it. I just prefer this more sleek look without having a pole. Another thing, when I looked up the cost for the cases for these things, which they don't come with it, neither do the Mauis. The cases for the Mauis don't come with it either. But man, the RCF cases are super expensive, and it's definitely an added cost, but I understand companies have to make profits, and it's just one of those things. And the very last con for this speaker. So as I mentioned with the Maui 44s, it's very easy to just snap in the 2 tops that go into the sub. You don't have to worry about any poles or anything like that. This takes a little bit longer to set up because you have to have your wire clips, install them on the pole. You screw the pole into the sub. You have to do it very carefully so you don't cross thread. Then you, of course, set your height. Make sure your heights are both consistent on both sides. Place your pins, boom, wire, plug the tops into the sub, and you're done. But again, those are a lot more steps in comparison to the Maui 44s. Okay, with all that being said, let's get into the sound test. So for the sound test, I have a few things that are very consistent, your controls for science, of course. We have a mixer set up here where all the levels are at 12 o'clock, including the input coming from an iPad. We're having 1 XLR wire that we're using to test both speakers, and they both are going into the input on the right. Both speakers have controls for the volume, and they are also set at 12 o'clock for both. And then last, we have 3 different genres of music that we're going to be testing. These are royalty-free tracks. I'm not trying to run into any copyright issues, but we have 3 different genres of music. So the first genre we're going to be testing is jazz, more classic jazz, kind of like what you would play for cocktail hour or for dinner. Jazz traditionally has more highs and mids, not super heavy on the bass, but it does have some, but it's like a nice balanced quality of music, I guess, for more of an audiophile sound. So let's go ahead and test those out and see how each of those perform for both speakers. Awesome. So now let's get into Afrobeats. So everyone knows Afrobeats has made a huge wave in the US and around the world. And Afrobeats music traditionally has a lot of bass. It also has mids and highs. So it's kind of like R&B, maybe some hip hop vibe to it, where it's kind of an equal balance of all those three frequencies. And I think it's more reflective of the average kind of song I would play during a party, whether it's mingle time or whether it's time to dance. So let's go ahead and get into that test. All right, now last we have Jersey Club. Again, Jersey Club has made a huge wave in the last decade or so in the US, and Jersey Club is probably at the other extreme of jazz, where the bass really hits, has a lot of sub bass in it, and it also has some accents of highs and mids as well, but it's more heavy on the bass. So let's go ahead and test those as well with these two speakers. So there goes the review and the sound test. Let me know what you think. Do you think the LD systems sound better? Do you think the Evox 12 sound better? Now, I'm not gonna share my opinion just yet. I'm still deciding, but very soon I will have a video that demonstrates which I picked and why. So go ahead and leave your comments below, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you thought. All right, peace.